The bicentennial Catholic nun. This is going to be a fun story. In 1976, I came to the United States to spend the summer. The funny part is that my mom, after my father died in 1973, decided to hire a Catholic nun from the United States. When I said hire, she actually sought an agency to see if there was a nun that could come and live in our house so we could practice English while my mother was working and will help us with our homework. Alas, that didn't last very long because we drove the nun, Sister Mary Hubert, crazy. She was probably around 55 years old or something like that. A good woman, a good nun. But maybe her ways were too stiff for these four little devils that, after my father died, unconsciously unleashed the worst possible behavior that any children could have, ages 4 to 10. What happened in the following months upon her arrival was like a tug of war between kids who did not want to be disciplined and a mother who was constantly absent because she was in the office taking care of her affairs. So she could not be the authority she would like to be. She gave the reins to the nun, and the nun lost her grip within weeks. We got her drunk, saw her naked while she took a shower when we hid in the bathroom closet, one after the other. Sorry, I'm laughing. One after another incident led her asking for asylum in a nearby convent/Catholic school that was next door to our house. That worked perfectly because then the nun was sleeping there. I think my mother was paying the school for her stay and her food, and she would come in the afternoon, so that made the arrangements a little bit better. By the end of the first year contract, she stayed in Colombia, but she went to work in another school. From time to time, I will see her at the school bus stop on my way to school. And sometimes we will meet in that corner. I was a little devil, so I don't know. But anyway, some of the things that happened with her coming to our house were that the first year that she was in Colombia, my brother was sent the first summer to her hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. He stayed there for 2 months in the house of some kids. My mother paid for that as well. And my brother was amazing. He just had the best of times making friends. My mom had given him some money for the trip, and he came back with almost all of it still in his pocket. He didn't spend a thing. It was my turn to be there in 1976. I had heard about the bicentennial commemoration of 200 years from the 1776 Declaration of Independence. I didn't actually know what contract my mom had negotiated before she put me inside of that plane, or whether what followed was part of her arrangement or a direct reaction to my outrageous behavior. The nun actually came along with me on the flight, and we started by staying a few days with her sister, an older woman. But then her niece and grandchildren started coming over, and things got chaotic. I made friends with Teresa, and we ended up having wild fights with pillows and baby powder until, I think, new arrangements had to be made. They sent me to Teresa's house, and from her house, I was handed off to the house of Mr. Bain, a father of the household who was running for the state senate. I think he was from a Democratic Party. So it was interesting for me, my first long summer in the United States. I was there with this family campaigning for the elections, getting $2 bills, having barbecues, and waving United States flags. In a way, it was a very beautiful way to understand what it means to be in this country for the 4th of July, which is today. Long story short, I stayed the whole summer. I had a blast. We ended up going to a house they had in the Ozarks. I learned how to water ski. But what stayed with me is the relationship that a lot of born Americans, unlike an immigrant like me, have with the flag, with the First Amendment, the 1791 Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. The First Amendment and freedom of speech, the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, the Fourth Amendment and the right to be secure in your person, house, and effects, the Fifth Amendment and its protection of property from being taken without just compensation, the 9th and the 10th Amendments, and the rights and powers they reserve to the people and the states. These were seeds planted on that 1976 trip. Living those principles and codifying them are two entirely different paths. And then came about studying the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and it fully connected me back to that first memory. That leads back to Aristotle and my love for the definition of politics, the definition of collective behavior, and his understanding of eudaimonia, the flourishing that the Declaration of Independence itself carries forward in the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That thread runs forward to John Locke, who gave me the definition that your own body first and the land you homestead second, property is an extension of the self. This led years later to Ludwig von Mises and Human Action, and thereafter to Rothbard, who made me aware of what the state can do the moment you comply and hand over what is yours. Hoppe and then Amuse, my teacher, moved to teach me the importance of understanding that property rights are at the core of the principles of civilization, not a policy position, but the axiom underneath it. In the case of violence, defending yourself in the homeland is something that one has to do, because if one does not have that agency, one is dead in every sense that matters. So here is to the grand experiment that sparked it all, the land of the free. Happy 250th anniversary. Coda. When Mars and Uranus meet at the beginning degrees of Gemini, the field is receiving a signal that ruptures. We can see this across the historical echoes of 1776, 1861 to 1943, years that smell like cannons, firearms, and conflict. Similar patterns, a declaration, a split, a mobilization, a nervous system. Gemini carries the word, the code, the route, the message, the document, the transmission. Mars is electrifying this action while Uranus breaks the circuit open. It changes the direction into one that nobody knows, unpredictable. They could end up as an innovation, propaganda, computation, or purely myth. The target was perception itself. The 20th and 21st centuries have rearranged the human mind around systems of persuasion and rapid obedience, using the same forces that created code breaking, pharmaceuticals, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence. They're also training the psyche to receive reality through mediated signals. Today, standing at the same degrees of the sky that stood over 1776, 1861, and 1943, with Mars and Uranus returning to the early degrees of Gemini, Pluto is moving through Aquarius, and Jupiter just entered Leo while opposing it. Completing a triangle with this conjunction, we're asked to pause and read the wiring architecture behind all this noise. While all this moves through the mind, we're also asked to show up in a solar way, in full expression, even as we hold the discernment to see what is underneath. Who's controlling the signal? Who's writing the narrative? Look for the strings of the puppeteer, because you will realize that the one who benefits from this fragmented, inverted language is the one selling sovereignty back to us as a product. We're being asked today, also by Mars and Uranus squaring the nodal axis in Pisces Virgo, an orientation to surrender with discernment.